Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for stopping by. Today I am creating 2 cards using basically one stamp and stencil set, and I have a really cool mirror stamping technique that I'm going to share. So some of the visible image items that I'm going to be using in this video are the Mesh It Up stencil, the Refuse Normal stamp set, and the Forever Love stamp set. I am using some Canson XL watercolor paper cut a little smaller than a 6x6 size. And so what I've done is I've taken my Misty and I have stamped up the main stamp from the Refuse Normal stamp set in some VersaFine Clair Nocturne, and then I have added some black embossing powder to that and heated that up. And I've cut my paper so that I could fit 2 images on this piece, and so I'm just going to go ahead and flip that so that I can get the second stamp. And I'm going to start my mirror stamping, and so what I'm going to do is place my stamp in the Misty and grab that with the door. And I'm going to be heat embossing, so I have prepped the paper with my anti-static tool. And I'm going to be stamping this second image on a piece of the acetate-like plastic that the stamps are stuck on. And so I have laid that down on my Misty, and I am inking this up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne. This is a pigment ink, and it's really important to use a pigment ink or a ink that stays wet for a fair amount of time. And so I'm going to ink that up probably about 4 or 5 times. I put that ink on there. I don't want to stamp this more than once, and so after I've got that inked up, I'm going to go ahead and close the door and stamp up that image. And I just want to go straight down and straight up, put a little bit of pressure on the Misty, but not move it around. And then I'm going to take that piece of plastic and turn it over so that the wet ink touches the paper, and I'm just going to press my hands against it, making sure to keep it in the same spot so that the image stays fairly clear. And once I've done that, I'm going to take that black embossing powder and cover that image and use my heat tool to set this. With that black embossing powder, it's going to cover up some of the imperfections that you might have from a mirror stamp. A lot of times you'll have to trace over a mirror stamp to get the image to be a little bit more clear. Using the black embossing powder really helps to make the image almost exactly like the original. And if you need to fill in any areas, you can use a pen, and the type of pen depends on what medium you're using to color. I'm using water, and so I'm using a Micron pen, which is waterproof. To color up these mohawks, I am using some Pixie Sparkle, and the colors I'm using for these are Purple Affair, which is this first one, and then I'm also going to use a Fuschia Rose. And so I'm just going to sprinkle that on, activate that powder with water, and then take my paintbrush and move that around. And I didn't want to heat dry these. I wanted them to air dry as much as possible, and so I'm going to go ahead and set those aside. And next I'm using a piece of opaque white paper, and I have prepped that with my anti-static tool, and I am using the stamp set called Forever Love, and I'm stamping up 6 of those roses, and then there's like this little barbed wire stamp that I'm going to stamp up as well, and I will go ahead and fussy cut all of those out. And then I'm going to color the faces, and I grabbed my Ohuhu watercolor swatch sheet where I already have some combos on there, and I didn't show the coloring for this because I'm not that great at alcohol marker coloring, but mainly I just wanted to mention that since this is stamped on watercolor paper, the ink isn't necessarily as bound to the paper as it might be for a smoother paper. And so when I did use those Ohuhu markers, some of that ink, the VersaFine Clair, smeared a little bit. As you might already know, you don't use alcohol markers with a pigment ink. It doesn't work well together. And so that's why I went back in with the watercolor and filled in more of the head portion. And so I went ahead and colored up the image and the little band they have around their necks. And then I'm going to take those roses that I cut out and add them to their mohawks. And then I grabbed a stamp set called Mesh-Ellaneous, Mesh-Ellaneous. And I just went ahead and stamped these up in some Watermark ink and emboss those with the silver. And I'm going to go ahead and take my scissors and fussy cut those out. And so I wanted some holes to be in this. I have a die that I could have used, but I wanted to go ahead and use the stamp set. So I created my own holes, and so I am using the Crocodile tool, and I'm using the 8/16 hole punch. I have some hand hole punches that they're a little big, so this 8/16 fit perfectly in the circles from the stamp. And so I ended up making 3. I only end up using 2 of those on my actual finished project. And so next I'm going to grab the stencil, and this is called Mesh It Up. And so I'm laying that on my watercolor paper, and I have taken my Watermark ink pad and just pushed it through the stencil, and then added that silver embossing powder and heat set that. And then I am going to get out this new distress spray, which is the Salvaged Patina, which is a beautiful, beautiful color. And then to that, I'm going to add Twisted Citron, and then I will also add Seedless Preserves. So basically what I'm doing is I'm spraying it, and then I'll add a little bit of water, and then I'll heat it, and then I might go in and add a little bit more of that color if I feel like the color needs to be a little bit stronger. And once I've dried my panel and I'm finished with it, I'll go ahead and take a paper towel and rub over that to get rid of the ink that's sitting on top of the embossed areas. For the second panel, I'm basically doing the same thing. I use the same stencil, the same technique. The only thing different is I am using black embossing powder instead of the silver. And I won't be coloring this background. So I'm using this little skull stamp set, which is from the Forever Love stamp set, and I have stamped that up on that panel. And then I'm going to go ahead and assemble both of the panels. This one I thought it needed a little bit more, and so I'm using the Scripted Streets stamp. Actually, both of the stamps from that set. One of them's scripty, one of them's kind of like a street map. And so I've gone ahead and stamped those onto my panel. I'm going to adhere the little punched out hole piece on the bottom, and then I popped up the Mohawk girl, and then I'm using the stamp set called No Regrets for the sentiment, which just says love yourself. And then to the Mohawk, I'm going to add some Nouveau jewels. And this originally was supposed to be one card on a 6x6 panel, and I felt it was too crowded with both of the images on one card, and so I ended up splitting it into 2. And so the second card right here, I am adding some Gunmetal Stickles, and then I am going to add some Decadent Wine, a Cosmic Twinkles, and I'm also going to use a sparkle star in the hair and also on the eyelid. It's probably going to be kind of hard to see in the video, but hopefully I was able to capture it on the still shots at the end of this video, so you can see all that sparkle in the images. But that will finish off that. I used the barbed wire on the bottom, and I also did pop this image up. And the sentiment says Refuse Normal, which is the name of that stamp set. And those will finish off, that will finish off my cards for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it or find it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I had a ton of fun creating these cards. As always with the mixed media cards, it's one of my favorite type of cards to create, so I absolutely love it, and so I hope you love it too. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend with me, and I hope to see you next time.